This lesson addresses Learning Outcome 2, reading and viewing, and the assessment standard which requires learners to explore the key features of text and explain how they contribute to meaning, describe development of plot, subplot, conflict, character, and role of narrator.
So I see you started reading the book already.
Yes, I have. But have you started reading the novel yet?
Not really. It's still at the bottom of my bag, though I am getting excited about reading it.
Well, I find the best way to start is to just start. Most novels grab you from the very first page.
Yeah, and then what happens when the book is too long and hard to understand?
Well, if you know a bit about who the author is, then you know exactly what to expect. As well as if you enjoy the topic that you're reading about, then you'll just be itching to start.
Hi there. Bongo was giving Mzwandile some pretty good advice. Often knowing something about the author and the context of the novel helps you get started. And once you have found some authors whose books you like, you'll be able to look out for other books written by those authors, and you'll almost be sure to enjoy them. Welcome to the second episode in our series on reading novels. In this lesson, we're going to look at the context of the novel we'll be reading during the series of lessons, and we will get to meet the author. This will help you see how knowing a little bit about the book that you are reading will help you make sense of what you are reading. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to investigate the author of a novel, consider the context of a novel based on the blurb. Here is a definition of context. Context is the background information connected to a piece of writing. Working out the context of a novel is very simple if you ask yourself these questions. What do we know about the writer's background? What do we know about the setting or environment in which the story takes place? What do we know about the time period in which the story takes place? What do we know about the society of the writer, the narrator, and the characters? In this series of lessons, we will be studying a novel entitled Because Pula Means Rain, written by Jenny Robson. Jenny Robson has written a lot of books for children and young adults, including Don't Panic Mechanic, Praise Song Savannah, and The Denials of Cow10. Jenny Robson has won numerous awards. In fact, Because Pula Means Rain won gold in the Sanlam Prize for Youth Literature in 2000 and a United Nations Prize. So now that we've seen some of the books Jenny has written, let's think about the context of her writing. Let's start with the first question on our context list. What do we know about the writer's background? Let's meet Jenny Robson and get her to tell us a bit about herself.
My name is Jenny Robson. I grew up in Cape Town, and right now I'm a music teacher up in Botswana. I'm 53 years old, and the three most important things in my life are, first of all, my family, which is my husband Matt. He comes from England, but he's happy to be here in Africa with me, which is great. I have two sons. They're both adults now. Their names are Stoff and Doug. The second most important thing in my life is the children that I teach up in Botswana. I teach them marimbas and steel drums, and we have a wonderful time making a terrible noise all day long. Great fun, and I love those children very much. And the third thing in my life that's very important to me is my writing. It's a very, very precious part of my life, and it means a lot to me.
How and why did you begin to write novels for teenagers?
I started writing about 17 years ago. 17 years ago, a really terrible thing happened in my life. It basically ripped me apart. I went to pieces, and I reached the rock bottom. And when I was going through this, I began to question everything that I knew, everything that I thought was right, everything I thought I'd understood about the world that I lived in. And as I began to claw my way out of this deep pit, I realized that what I wanted to do more than anything else in the world was to write. I didn't actually decide I wanted to write for teenagers as such. But every time I started writing something, I realized it was the kind of thing that young people would want to read.
Why do you think teenagers should read?
When a young person is watching a movie or watching a music video or playing computer games, when it's fun and it's very relaxing, and we all need to have fun and we need to relax. But with a movie, with a music video, with computer games, it's somebody else who's doing all the creating and all the imagining and all the thinking. And you sitting there watching that movie, you are just a dumping ground. You are just something passive that is receiving all this interesting creativity, but you're doing nothing yourself. With reading, it's a whole different thing.
How do you plan a novel? How do you decide what it will be about? Where do you get your ideas for books?
When I get an idea, I just let it live there inside my mind for months and months and months. And it's almost like a baby growing, getting more and more developed, more and more complicated, more complex, having more meaning put into it. When it comes to deciding what I need to write about, that is so easy for me, because I will never write about anything unless it's something I desperately care about, something that means enormous amount to me.
When do you do your writing?
I get up every morning before the sun rises, and while the day is dawning, that's when I'm doing my writing. That's when I feel most positive, like the world is a wonderful, wonderful place.
Now, we were lucky enough to get to interview Jenny Robson, but obviously this isn't always possible. This doesn't mean, though, that there aren't other ways of finding out about the author. You can always find out about the author by reading the writer's blurb, the printed information that you generally find on the first few pages of the book. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a look at the title of the novel that we will be studying. The title is important because it is our first clue about what the novel may be about, because Pula means rain. Do you know what Pula means? Pula is the currency used in Botswana, like we use rands in South Africa, and it is also the Setswana word for rain. Can you guess why the people in Botswana decided to name their money after rain? Rain in Botswana, like in many countries in Africa, is very precious. Without water, they would not survive. In the novel it says, that is what we call our money in Botswana, Pula, because Pula means rain, and rain is precious here, more precious than the diamonds they dig up at the mine. Wow, so rain in Botswana is really valuable. This makes me wonder what the book will be about. Rain, money, precious things, things we value. Remember this. Later, when we look at the theme in the novel, the title will begin to make more sense to you. Now, let's see if we can answer the other context questions by reading the introduction to the book. Again, this is often found either on the back cover of the book or in the first couple of pages. Do you remember what the other questions were? We need to think about what we know about the setting or environment in which the story takes place. What do we know about the time period in which the story takes place? What do we know about the society of the writer, the narrator, and the characters? Let's read the blurb of the story, which appears on the back of the book or on the inside cover, to see if it helps us answer these questions.
I believe in ghosts, says Emmanuel, looking out across a landscape tent. Emmanuel's grandmother does not believe in ghosts, but in such a wide and open land, spread out under such a wide and open sky, there is room enough for beliefs and many truths. Because the ghosts believe in Emmanuel, ghosts are the shadows of the past that still fall upon the present, and Emmanuel and his village have yet to face the terrible secrets that lies buried in their history. For the curse to be lifted and for peace to return to the community, Emmanuel must take a dangerous journey back in time and memory. He must face down his own fears and the buried fears of his people. He must right a terrible wrong that was committed many years ago on a night in which there was no moon at all.
Okay, so what do we know about context after reading the blurb? What do we know about the setting or environment in which the story takes place? What do we know about the time period in which the story takes place? The novel is obviously set in Botswana, in a village. We know this because the blurb talks about the landscape under a full Botswana moon. I think that the time period of the novel is present day, although the blurb does talk about secrets buried in the past and ghosts. So maybe we'll also find out about the history of the village. Okay, that answers the first two questions. But what about the third one? What do we know about the society of the writer, the narrator, and the characters? Well, it sounds like the narrator is a boy or a young man called Emmanuel, and that he lives in this village in Botswana. It sounds like people there have differing beliefs because he says he believes in ghosts, but his grandmother doesn't. We also know that he's going to have to be very strong to solve the problems in his village. Has the blurb got you thinking about the book? I hope so, because it's meant to. Let's see if Mzwandile is a bit more interested in reading the book now that he knows who wrote it and what it's about.
Okay, Pongo, I think I've wasted enough time already. Let me start reading this book.
Aha, so we seem to have finally gotten you interested in reading the book, Mzwandile.
Yeah, and as far as this blurb goes, I want to know what this big secret is about.
And I want to know about the curse and how Emmanuel managed to get it lifted.
Great! It seems like they are keen to read the book, and I hope that you are too. We don't have time for much more, but before we go, here's your task. Find a novel that you haven't read before. Then try to answer the 4 context questions by looking carefully at the cover of the novel, the story blurb, and the writer's information. See you next time when we will start to read Because Pula Means Rain. In closing, remember this quote: "Today a reader, tomorrow a leader." See you next time.